In a world ruled by unwritten rules and blood paid for with blood, a little girl loses everything in the blink of an eye. She watches her father die because she chose to protect her. She was raised by an assassination organization that once produced a legend, John Wick. As the trail of the killers who killed her father begins to unravel, Eve chooses a path she has always avoided, to fight the system that raised her and seek justice with her own hands. This is the story of Eve, the ballerina and deadly killing machine of the John Wick universe. A struggle between hope, revenge, and identity. Welcome to the Ballerina 2025 storyline.
No idea what you did.
Cool.
Perhaps I can send someone to solve the problem.
The Baba Yaga.
She sent you here to kill me?
Your choice. Wait. And you cannot check.
Rules.
The story begins with a young girl named Eve, holding a ballerina toy while mourning in the hospital, the loss of her beloved father, Javier. We are taken to a flashback when Eve still lived with her father. Javier wanted his daughter to pursue her dream of becoming a ballerina. However, their peace was disturbed when troops from a mysterious cult arrived, led by a man named the Chancellor. Javier was cornered. It turned out that Javier's wife used to be a member of the cult, while Javier himself came from their rival organization, Ruska Roma. In order to save his daughter, Javier was given a tragic choice. He could kill the Chancellor with one bullet, but that would mean the cult's troops would kill Javier and his child. In the end, Javier chose to shoot himself to protect Eve. But before he could shoot, little Eve screamed. Chaos ensued. Javier managed to take Eve away before their house exploded. Unfortunately, the bullet was already lodged in Javier's body, and he died in front of his daughter. As Eve ponders, a mysterious man arrives. Winston Scott, the manager of the Continental Hotel, a neutral ground for hitmen, and an influential figure in the underworld that her father runs. He expresses his condolences for her father's death and offers Eve to stay under the auspices of the Ruska Roma organization, where Javier was raised. This is also where John Wick was raised. Eve is then confronted by the director, who promises to care for and protect her from those who have taken away her past and will not let anyone steal her future. That's where Eve meets Nogi, one of the senior instructors in the organization. Nogi knows Eve's father very well, even calling him Kikimora, a spirit figure in Slavic mythology who can be good or evil depending on his host. Like two sides of a coin, it all depends on Eve herself. What kind of Kikimora she wants to be. Winston then gives Eve a promise coin and says that he will always be there for her, and the coin is used as a reminder. 12 years have passed. Eve trained under the director as a ballerina and also studied fighting and shooting with Nogi. Day by day, Eve underwent tough training before becoming an assassin or Kikimora. Eve's only friend was Tatiana, her training partner. However, Tatiana was eventually expelled from the organization because the director considered her to have no killer aura. She only had sadness, not pain. Eve, who lived with the wound of losing her father, was considered more suitable to be an assassin. Eve finally got the chance to become a Kikimora. She had to duel with a quick shooting contest, and Eve managed to win it. At that time, a legend came to their headquarters, John Wick, who asked for protection from Ruska Roma. The students were stunned when the headquarters was visited by the legend John Wick, who was at that time seeking help from the director. This story is part of John Wick 3. Eve greeted John and asked how she could get out of the organization. John only answered lightly, "The front door is open and Eve still has a choice." Eve's first mission is to protect a Korean woman named Katla from a man named Il Seong. Fighting in a nightclub, Eve successfully saves Katla and completes her mission. After that, the director tattoos Fortis Fortuna Adiuvat on her back. Fortune favors the brave. 2 months later, Eve completes another massacre in a nightclub, but on the way, she is attacked. After fighting back, Eve finds a cross mark on the attacker's wrist, the same symbol as her father's killer. She brings the evidence to the director, but is forbidden from investigating further. In this world, there is a code of ethics. Do not touch the enemy organization. Eve arrives at the Continental Hotel and is greeted by Karen, the loyal receptionist. He conveys his desire to meet the head of Continental, Winston Scott. During the meeting, Eve immediately asks about the mysterious organization that killed her father. However, like the director, Winston insists that Eve should never have anything to do with them. But when Eve takes out the promise coin that Winston gave her as a child, the man finally gives in. Reluctantly, Winston explains that what Eve is looking for is an assassination organization. They operate without rules, without a clear identity, and no one knows for sure where their headquarters are. In fact, according to Winston, they could even come to the Continental Hotel. Winston then gives one clue. There is a member of the organization named Daniel Payne who is currently hiding in the Prague branch of the Continental Hotel. Daniel has a contract worth $2 million for his life. Eve must meet Daniel Payne, because only from that man can she find a trail to the headquarters of the organization that took her father. Eve is now at the Hotel Continental Prague branch. She immediately checks into a room right next to Daniel Payne's room. Without realizing it, her movements are being watched by several people. Eve sneaks into Daniel's room. There, she finds out that Daniel actually has a daughter named Ella. Eve immediately asks about the whereabouts of the mysterious organization that killed her father. However, the situation becomes more complicated when a woman named Lena, a member of the organization, raises the contract value on Daniel Payne's head to $4 million. As a result, the hitmen at the hotel start hunting Daniel. Daniel reveals that people from the organization Eve is looking for are actually also at the hotel. It turns out they came to kidnap Ella, Daniel's daughter. A fight breaks out. Daniel tries to take Ella away, and in desperation, he asks Eve for help to save his daughter. In return, Daniel promises to tell her the location of the organization's headquarters. In fact, Daniel wanted to get Ella out of the same organization, a dark place that had also trapped his life. But unfortunately, when they tried to escape, Daniel was paralyzed by the enemy, and Eve was caught too. It turned out that all this chaos came from the Chancellor's orders. Lena gave information that there was a woman who helped Daniel Payne escape, and that woman was none other than Eve. At that time, Eve had been handed over to the Continental hotel security to be executed because she was considered to have violated the rules. However, after being investigated, it was proven that Eve did not commit murder in the hotel area. Thus, she was declared safe from punishment. After escaping, Eve went to a gun shop and immediately met the owner, Frank. She asked about the people from the organization who had killed her father. However, Frank claimed not to know. While choosing weapons, suddenly their shop was attacked by members of the organization who were hunting Eve. A fierce battle ensued. In a tense action, Eve managed to paralyze the entire force using only grenades. After the battle was over, Frank finally spoke up. He told Eve about the location of the organization's headquarters, located in a hidden settlement in the icy mountains. Eve then went to a remote settlement in the icy mountains, a place that was said to be the headquarters of the mysterious organization. However, upon arriving there, she realized that she was being watched from a distance. In the middle of her journey, the director contacted her and warned Eve not to get involved further with the organization. Even so, Eve continued walking and entered a restaurant that also sold ballerina toys, as if holding a symbol of her past. She ordered a cup of coffee, but not long after that, the restaurant visitors began to leave one by one. Her suspicions were proven correct. Suddenly, someone attacked Eve from behind. Eve managed to paralyze the attacker, but that was not the end. It turned out that the restaurant worker was also a member of the organization, and he also attacked. It didn't stop there. Several additional people from the organization appeared and surrounded Eve. A fierce fight ensued. With the strength and technique she had learned over the years, Eve managed to get out of the restaurant alive. Knowing that Eve was still safe, the Chancellor immediately activated the emergency protocol. It turned out that all the residents living in the settlement were part of the organization, and now they are all ordered to hunt Eve down without mercy. Unfortunately, in her escape, Eve is caught by Lena. At that moment, Lena realizes that Eve is a member of Ruska Roma, a rival organization that her father once betrayed. After that, we see the Chancellor with Ella, Daniel Payne's daughter. However, it is clear that Ella does not like his presence, until finally it is revealed that Ella is the Chancellor's biological granddaughter. Lena then gives the Chancellor shocking information that Eve is part of Ruska Roma. Eve is arrested and brought directly before the Chancellor. Because of Eve's actions in attacking their organization, the Chancellor states that this means war between Ruska Roma and his organization. In fact, for a long time, both parties have had a peace agreement, and Eve's actions are considered a violation of the agreement. However, Eve insists that Ruska Roma has nothing to do with her actions. For her, this is a personal matter, revenge for her father's death. The Chancellor also reveals a fact that Daniel Payne, her son, has tried to take Ella out of the organization, but she refused. For her, this organization is a legacy that has stood for decades and cannot be abandoned just like that. From that conversation, the shocking reality was finally revealed. Eve is also the granddaughter of the Chancellor. Eve's father was the Chancellor's son-in-law, and when Eve's mother died, her father tried to take Eve away from the organization. This is what triggered the Chancellor's anger and made him hunt down Javier. This is the opening scene of the film. Not only that, Lena also revealed that she was Eve's biological sister, the daughter of the same father. When their father ran away, he only took Eve and left Lena in the organization. This grew a deep grudge in Lena's heart. Eve was certainly shocked to learn all of this reality, but outside, the Chancellor's troops had surrounded them. Feeling that the situation was no longer safe, the Chancellor ordered to kill both of them at once. A big explosion occurred. Lena died, but before her death, she had time to say that all this time, she missed Eve very much. Eve took the katana sword, and with a burning rage, she finished off the organization's troops that entered the place one by one. Afterwards, Eve looked directly at the Chancellor and said that she would end everything by killing him that very night. Panicking, the Chancellor immediately contacted the director and threatened, if Eve was not immediately withdrawn, then war between the two organizations would be inevitable. The director tried to find a middle ground. He made a deal. He would send someone to stop Eve before the war really broke out. The deadline was clear: midnight tonight. Although it was difficult, the director had no other choice. Eve had made a decision, and the consequences had to be faced. That very night, it was revealed that the person sent by the director was John Wick. Meanwhile, the Chancellor told all his members not to touch Eve before midnight, because he wanted to give John Wick himself, the legend, the chance to finish Eve. On a snowy night, John Wick finally arrived. Before the fight began, John gave Eve a choice: fight him or leave and end it all here. But Eve had made up her mind. She chose to fight. A fierce battle ensued, two trained figures, testing each other's abilities and determination. After an intense duel, John Wick finally defeated Eve. But despite having the upper hand, John still showed mercy. He asked Eve to leave, giving her one last chance. But Eve refused. She couldn't back down because her revenge against the Chancellor had not been avenged. Seeing Eve's determination, John gave her one last chance. He gave her until midnight to complete her mission. And he warned her, if it was past that time, John himself would hunt her down. Knowing that John Wick released Eve, the Chancellor reactivated the full security protocol. As a result, all members of his organization returned to hunt Eve mercilessly. The battle took place in various corners of the settlement. Eve cleverly set up claymore bombs to trap the troops. In the midst of the chaos, she also found a very deadly heavy weapon. Meanwhile, the Chancellor ordered his special forces to immediately finish off Eve. They combed the area and finally headed to the weapons warehouse where Eve was hiding. Several troops managed to enter, but ended up being roasted alive. Yes, Eve used a flamethrower to burn her enemies, but the opponent she faced was no less dangerous: Dex, the Chancellor's right-hand man. A fire-against-fire duel took place inside the warehouse. A brutal, intense fight. Eve finally managed to get out of the warehouse, but outside, she was greeted again by waves of troops who were waiting. One of the Chancellor's men suggested that they immediately evacuate their leader. However, the Chancellor arrogantly refused, stating that he had never in history run away. Unfortunately, Eve's flamethrower has run out of fuel. Dex appears and attacks immediately. Eve is cornered, but she quickly grabs a fire hose. And then a unique battle ensues. Water versus fire. When Eve was cornered and almost helpless, fortunately John Wick came to her aid, shooting Deck's flamethrower. However, his actions also made him a target. The organization's troops began to attack him for helping Eve. Meanwhile, Eve managed to intercept the Chancellor, who was trying to escape. The Chancellor tried to give her final advice, saying that even though he died, the organization would live on, because its system was irreplaceable. But Eve was not interested in listening to long lectures. Exactly at midnight, she executed the Chancellor and ended it all. After that, Eve took Ella, Daniel Payne's daughter, away from the place. On the other hand, John Wick contacted the director and confirmed that Eve had successfully killed the Chancellor. Not long after, Ella was finally reunited with her father, Daniel Payne, who turned out to be still alive. Eve returned to the Continental Hotel and booked a room. Winston welcomed her, but warned her, from now on, many parties would be targeting her. At the end of the story, Eve attended a ballet performance, performed by her old friend Tatiana, but the piece did not last long. Someone put a contract of $5 million on Eve's head, and finally, the film ends, leaving the question, how far will Eve continue to survive in this world? That's all for our movie storyline this time. If you have any suggestions or input, please write them in the comments column. For those who have just joined this channel, don't forget to like, comment, and of course subscribe, so you don't miss out on other discussions of the latest cinema films. See you in the next video.